What's up, man? What's going, Jared?
Hey, brother, how you doing?
Oh, I'm just
What was your name, bro? I always call you Old Religion Dystopia. So, like, what's your name?
it's Michael Adams.
Mike. Cool, cool, cool. Just wanted to ask you that first off.
Well, that's a good idea. Thanks.
All right, so let's hear about your encounters.
Oh, which one? Let's see. Well, the two major ones that I've had was in 2017. First one was in August, and then the other one was in I think it was December 19th of 2017. And I've had like
Okay.
probably a dozen sightings and that kind of stuff. So yeah. So what would you like to hear? You just want.
Any encounters, man. Go with the two best ones, I guess, or you can start at the
Well, the
first one.
first.
Whatever you want to do with, man. I'd like to hear it all, really. Whatever you're into sharing, we're down with, man. You know.
I got a story. I got my stories. That's for sure. You know, in 2017, um, I was a truther. I was a dude that was studying the Bible real heavily, and
Okay.
I got real fed up with it all. I got rid of all the contradictions and disappointment and absurdity, And so I decided to take a break, and I wanted to do something that was faux pas or forbidden. And back in 2017, it's amazing how a lot of people's attitudes towards this subject have changed in the past 5 years. But in 2017, believe it or not, there still was a real big joke back then, right? Most people thought it, and still they still do today, but that Bigfoot, Sasquatch was a joke, right? So I decided I was going to do research on it and prove that it was nothing more than a government psyop, something doing with Agenda 21 and or Agenda 2030, and try to keep people out of the woods, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I started doing heavy research. I do believe that these things will start. You can manifest these things in your life, from my experience.
Sure.
The more you focus
For
on
sure.
this stuff, the more chances you're going to have of having an encounter or a sighting or something. But I didn't know it at the time, and I was like interviewing people, and I was hanging out with M.K. Davis. We did like a bunch of shows together. We did a series together. And after about 6 months of doing that and listening to other people, I realized I was never going to find out the truth about this subject unless I was going to go out myself and try to find it, right, in my own area. And actually, it's real interesting. The very first time I went out, and I didn't think anything was going to happen, and I went to it's called the Oak Openings uh, area in Northwest Ohio, and there's a big park there, and woods and stuff like that. So I didn't think I was going to find anything, but so I took my son, and actually it's interesting that the very first place I stopped, when I stopped on the side of the road, and the reason I stopped was because on my left side there are some sand dunes. We have like our native prickly pear here. It's like a type of cactus, and sand dunes, what the ancient seabed used to be. And there was like an X structure or something that looked kind of like an X structure on the side of the road. So I stopped, and we instead of going that direction, we went to our right, and it was a lot of heavy woods there, and but it's summer, so this is like July of 2017, and I we walk in there. So there's like the 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 brush and all that has all the foliage. You couldn't really see into the woods, so you had to walk into it. So me and my son, we walked into there, and about 10 feet into the woods. Lo and behold, about 20 feet in front of us is this giant teepee structure. it was big enough for me and my son to walk under and all that, right? And it's which is really bizarre when you think about because of my very first time going out, the very first place I stop at, and the and the very
Right?
10 feet away from where well, I guess it would be about 30 feet away from where I stopped at and pulled over. There's a giant teepee structure, right?
I don't think that's a coincidence, you know?
No, not even close to it. So but it's time I had no idea what I was getting myself into, really, because it's everyone has their quote unquote opinions and their biases, but if you approach this as open minded as possible, and truly, try to erase as much of your biases and your preconceptions or not preconceptions of. I just woke up, by the way. That's one. You're going to discover this is nothing to what everyone else is saying. You're going to just have to figure this one out for yourself. But yeah, then once I did that happen, and once we had that experience, the game was on. And I truly believe once they know that the game is on. And like the one I end up citing or encounter I had in December of 2017, it was in my backyard, right? But this is also about the same time period when there was the big solar eclipse that everyone was talking about in 2017, right in August. And prior to this time, my first sighting, which is not all that, it's a very interesting experience in its own right, but happened about the very beginning of August 2017 when I saw one run across a path super fast, like it looked like it was hunched over like a cyclist, right? And it went and it was on a path that someone could have rode a bike, but it clearly wasn't a cyclist because of the speed of it and the size of it and all, and I doubt it if some giant cyclist wearing a hoodie was going to be riding his bike at full speed, right? So, anyways, that's for another story. But my first encounter happened, it was like maybe around August 10th, around that time period. I think it was a Tuesday, the second week of August, whatever date that was. I should look back into that date. And or was it Thursday? It was Tuesday or Thursday. I know it starts with a T, so. No, it had to be Thursday. That's what it was. And Wednesday, I was talking to my big brother who lives in Northern California. My big brother, he had his own encounter or sighting, I should say. He had his own sighting of Sasquatch, the one that's like Patty, right, in Northern California. He's lived most of his life either in Butte County or the adjacent county. I can't remember the name of it. It's the same place where like Chico, California is, Orville, Paradise, California.
I have something to say for 1 second. Yeah. I know a woman down from San Diego, or I forget where she is, San something down there in California, but she was on her way to Chico, and they came across a Sasquatch that was run over. They came across a blood trail on the highway in the middle of nowhere. She said it was like a highway, there's no one around in the middle of the night, and there's a blood trail that went for about 2 minutes. And they came up on this body lying on the ground that was like longer than their car, covered in hair, and it was a humanoid body.
That's pretty wild,
so
man. I never heard of that.
Very Sasquatchy area.
I never heard of that one before, I don't think. But it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah,
so, that's for sure.
I know this woman. I met her from TikTok. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's wild, man. That's what experience that would be. You know what I mean? To actually see a dead body of one and see it up close. It must have been pretty damn ugly and smelly too, and gross.
She said she was so scared. They were both really scared because they're just these two young women, right? And they're in the middle of literally nowhere. And she was like, they were really scared, so they just got out of there right away.
Yeah, it's reasonable. That's quite reasonable, Yeah, jeez. You know, I just like my brother. He saw one. Him and his son that were horseback riding the other side of the stream there that runs through Orville. They saw one that was it was like lifting up a huge tree log right there's on the other side of the stream, and they thought that maybe it was looking for grubs or something. Who knows? So I do think we're dealing with multiple things here that we're all just labeling as Bigfoot as well, by the way.
I
And
think that's true.
so, but anyways, so what happened was I was talking to my brother and I was having my experiences. I was having sightings, and and I asked, I was talking to my brother. I said, I think this is something different than they're telling us. I'm like, man, this seems what people would consider to be spiritual in nature, whatever that means, right? And and we're talking, and he says, you know what, Mike? Now that you know this, do not be surprised if you run across indigenous people, Native Americans, whatever, because they understand the big picture better than the rest of us, right? Because of their culture and their understanding and all that. So, and because once you recognize that there's something deeper than just some flesh and blood thing going on here, you just don't be surprised you didn't run across them. And I'm like, how'd that possibly be? Because I live in Northwest Ohio, and there's like the closest person to being a Native American is me, which my grandmother was Cherokee / Ojibwe. And, so that's the closest of Native American I know, or knew. And we don't have any reservations around here.
In your blood, man, and like I have Native in my blood like that as well. My grandma's Native. My mom's getting her status. I'm getting mine. We have Native in our family, right? We are Native, and a Native person will tell you you're having these experiences because you are Native.
That could be. Me and my big brother theorized that on my grandma's side that we had Cherokee or Ojibwe medicine men in our family, so and that could have been part of it too. And I know some people would label it as generational curses. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what they would label it. You know what I'm saying? Especially if it come from the Abrahamic faiths. You know what I mean? They would see it as that, and other people will see otherwise. So, regardless of the fact, it definitely has been a blessing and a curse in my life. Let's put it that way. When I hear all these people say there's nothing but fun and joy and happiness, I'm like, you're not being. I don't know where you're at, but it's not my experience. So anyways, so he's telling me this, and like I said, there's no Native Americans in my town. It's predominantly just Caucasian people. You're talking, foreigner or African American or whatever. You know what I mean? It's your typical Midwest town. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
and actually, this place it turns out has all the features necessary for a good sighting, because we have quarries, we have water structures like streams. The name of the town is Sylvania, which means tree, and it's called the Tree City. It's known for its trees, right? So it's and then we got farm fields around us. We got a big grain silo that's about a mile north of us. We got everything that you would, as far as maybe if it's something to do with the physical side of things. But also the other thing we also have is a lot of cemeteries, right? But anyways, we'll get to that. So he's telling me that I'm going to have interaction with Native Americans. I'm like, whatever, man. The very next day, I go to Little Caesars, right? Because I was, didn't have money and was hungry. And then, and if you're starving, then you go to Little Caesars because you get like a $5 pizza. Even though it's crap, and then it tastes like it's awful, but
Hello? Can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
Can't hear you, buddy.
I hear you. I hear you. Mike says Mike says it works.
Here, yeah.
My mic says it works on my end. Can everybody else hear me?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Yeah, he says that the one dude says that, or person, I don't know. Yeah, it says he can hear me.
Weird.
So
Weird, I
anyways.
couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay.
So the last thing I heard was that, when you're starving, you eat Little Caesars kind of thing.
Right. But there's a point that I brought it because what happened was when I walked out of Little Caesars, a dude walking up this road. Now, one thing I discovered that I forgot to mention was maybe a week before this, I found a teepee structure down the hill from Little Caesars, like the L-shaped shopping mall that's full of restaurants, and in the middle of that L shape, there's a dumpster, right? And I found down the hill from that a teepee structure in the middle of my town, right? I didn't think much of it at first. I thought, I'm thinking, all these things running through my head. Are these kids doing this? Is somebody practicing witchcraft? Blah, 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 this kind of stuff. But there was a trail that was worn from the teepee structure up to the dumpsters. That clearly something had worn out. And, I didn't know if it maybe was, I don't know. You rationalize things. You try to, because none of it makes sense at first, right? So, anyway, so this guy, he's walking from that direction, and he's got this long salt and pepper hair. As somebody, I was a forest firefighter at one time in my life in Northern California, so I had a chance to hang out with Navajos and a lot of the tribes from Alaska and all that. So I can, when you've been around indigenous people, an indigenous person, they just look different than all the rest of us, right? Especially a pure-blooded one, man. You just, what you're looking at, right? And this dude, he has this long salt pepper hair. He's dressed in black, and he's walking up the road from where this teepee structure is. My brother told me last night I was don't be surprised to run across Native Americans, and lo and behold, right before my eyes, which never ever happens, and I'm telling you, it never happens, and it hasn't since.
And you don't know where you're from, right?
Right, yeah, there he is, and so I'm like, I don't know this guy, but he's Native American. My brother just said something last night. I'm going to go check this out. And so I get my car. I drive up to him and I say, "Hey, man, how's it going?" Are you Native American? And he goes, "Yeah." Hey, so, I have this pizza here. Would you like to share that with me and we can talk? And I know it sounds really strange, right? A complete stranger to do it, but and he goes, "Yeah, sure, cool." So we pull over to the parking lot there. We're talking, and I share him this pizza, and I said, "Hey, man, do you?" Oh, I actually, this is how it started. I first asked him, "Are you indigenous, Native American?" He goes, "Yeah," and I said, "Do you know about the teepee structure down the road?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "Would you like to have the pizza?" And so then we start talking, right? He shared his experiences, how he says he knows about them, that he's seen them in Montana and Northern California, and I go, "Man, I think I found something that might be close to being a nest in the middle of our town, by the way." And I was telling about this. They said there's this Roman Catholic cemetery just about a quarter mile south of us. That what happened was a few weeks ago, this big tree that I couldn't even put my arms around as far as the trunk. That'd be big for me where I'm at, right? And so, just it was like broke off, and about 5 to 6 feet up, about my head height, and just is laying across this ravine. And I've been driving around and taking pictures and paying attention, and I swear to God, I'm seeing heads, like these black shaped heads, pop up on the other side of this tree in this ravine, and they're pointy and they're black, and there's something weird going on there. I think it might be a nest, man. If you want to go check it out. And he said, "Yeah." So, because, one of the things I told him as we're talking, I said, "Man, where are you going?" He said he's heading home. And I said, "Well, I'll drive you home, right?" and because we're just chilling and gelling and all that kind of stuff, right? At least that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And so we get over to the cemetery, and this ravine that cuts right through the middle of the cemetery, and the driveway on both sides of the ravine does like a horseshoe shape, so you can drive real close to where the ravine is, within feet, and you can drive real close to where this tree had fell over that in this tree break. By the way, the leaves were still on this tree, so and there was no lightning storm, and there was no high winds, and whatever broke this tree in the had massive force, right? And I have a theory about that myself, but anyways, so we get over there, and this is getting dark now, and by the time we get there, it's actually that period where it goes from dusk to night, right? And we're looking there, and so it's really dark in the ravine, right? And we're standing there, we're literally, I would say we're like 25 yards from where this tree is, right, on the top of the ravine. He starts doing that traditional Bigfoot holler thing, right? And does a couple times. And I'm not thinking anything's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, right? After all, everything I just experienced the first 6 months of 2017, I had no idea what was going to happen, right? And all of a sudden, two heads pop up on the other side of this tree, two black heads. Now, I'm telling you, this is only like yards away from us. This is like 30 yards away from us. You couldn't miss the damn things, right? And one was a little bigger than the other. And he's doing that Bigfoot howl thing, and then he conveniently throws a piece of pizza over to it, right? To them. And
Sharon, man.
And one of those pops up on the other side, stands up, right? Or somehow materializes up one way or the other. And I took to him and I go, "What are you doing, man?" And he goes, "What? You know what you're doing." "What do you mean?" I said, "Those damn things are going to come home to me." And by the way, I was right about that. It did. One of them damn things did come home to me. And, he does a few more hollering and, throws another piece of pizza there. If I have gotten that part of the story right. Yeah, I think that's about how it went. And this thing, I'm telling you, is massive, and it went from one side of this tree, and this tree was massive too, and it still had its branches, and the branches were green, and somehow it went from one side of that tree to the other side of that tree, is crawling up the frickin' ravine to me and him, and gets no more than 15 feet from us. I'm telling you, massive, and the way it was crawling, people talk about spider crawl, but this was more like a frog type of the way he was crawling. But I'm telling you, it went from one side of that tree to the other side of that tree, and we didn't hear it go from one side of the tree to the other side of the tree. Okay, now if it would have jumped over the damn tree, being the size that it was, because it was to me well over 9 feet and massive. The earth should have shook. We should have heard the grass and everything rustle, right? If it went through the tree, we definitely should have heard like branches break and stuff and like that. We didn't hear anything. I'm telling you, we were that close that, even if it was a 50-pound boy or girl jumped, right, you would hear it, right? You would know. You wouldn't be able to miss it. We didn't hear the damn thing. Okay?
That's a trip, man.
Well, that's the honest truth too, and that's the way it is, man. And I'm like, we're looking at this thing. This is like crawling up this ravine. We're like I'm 15 feet in front of it, and I'm like, I look to this dude that I've just met. This thing's crawling up the frickin' ravine, and I'm like, it's time to go. Now I'm going to tell you, in all honesty, I couldn't think about what was going on, and I didn't. What's that?
Crawling up towards you or the other side?
It was crawling up towards me. I tell him it was 15 feet from my face.
Let's go.
Yeah, and so and here's the weird thing. I didn't, like the second time I had an encounter, I felt that dread and fear that people talk about. This time I didn't feel it
Yeah.
at all. Maybe because it was, and it was a long period. This whole thing, it wasn't seconds, or I saw it for a minute or a couple seconds. I mean, it was several minutes. This encounter, right? And I didn't feel the fear and dread and all that, but I was concerned about my circumstances in the middle of a frickin' cemetery. It's the first time I've ever seen anything that even looks close to what people are talking about when it comes to Sabe, you know, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever, right? This thing's massive and it's jet black, and it was amazing about it. He said he saw the eye shine when it was on the other side of the tree. I didn't see eye sign. And this one thing I've noticed too, that you could have three, or you could have a dozen people all having this, witnessing the same event, and everyone's going to see it differently. It's the most bizarre thing, but it's part of our reality, right?
Sometimes only one person will see this stuff. Like
Exactly.
that just happened with you, right? Like you could be with a group of people and only one person could be seeing something, and nobody else will be like, "What are you talking about?" Right? Like
Yeah, it's
that
part
kind
of
of
the
stuff.
gig. It's 100 part of the gig. So this is another reason why I think it's a little bit on the. I don't like even the term woo. I think that they use that as part of like social engineering and mind control kind of thing. I don't think that people involved in it realize what's going on, but I understand how social engineering and like uses words and phrases like conspiracy theorist or
I
pareidolia
get what you're
and
saying.
all this kind of
I
stuff.
get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? So I don't like woo. I think that this we just broaden the horizons here. That the world's a lot bigger than we understand, right? And it's just the way it goes. And I have a scientific background, by the way, in environmental science and management, and I have in my life actually applied the scientific method a few times in my life, so I do have a bit of understanding of this, right? So, but regardless of that, let's get back to the story here. So, this thing's crawling up the ravine. There's this dude next to me that I have no idea who he is, and I'm more concerned about the dude next to me than the Bigfoot. That's what I'm thinking. Because I'm outnumbered here, and I don't know each of these people. And this is getting really weird, right? And I said, man, it's time to go. And fortunately, we were pretty damn close to my car. And we got in that car, and now I didn't see it rise up above the ravine, because people ask, well, did you see it, after we got in the car, took off? And I'm like, man, I was focused on not running over tombstones. I didn't was looking back to see if they're Bigfoot. So I was the one driving, right? I was the one getting
Yeah.
out. So I had to do that horseshoe loop thing and get the heck out of there. I mean, it would look really good in the middle of your town if the police show up and say, "What are you doing at 9 o'clock at night?" And in the cemetery here, and why were you running over tombstones? Well, I was hanging out with this Crow Indian who turns out who claims to be a medicine man that practices the dark arts and death, shamanism, right? And I saw a Bigfoot, and so I got tried to get the hell out of there, ran over all these tombstones. Imagine how that would look. Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
the only thing that was going to happen to me if I said anything like that, I was going to go to the pen. That's what I was going to do, spend some time in jail and probably have to see a shrink. So I had to
Yeah.
drive carefully and stay focused, go around this horseshoe. So I don't know what it looked like when it stood up. But I could tell you what it was like when it was crawling up that ravine. And one thing is just like what everyone else says, it had the compact head, um, broad shoulders. The bizarre thing is that it was blacker, jet black, blacker than that sky itself, than the air itself. If you ever hung out, everyone's done this. Everyone's hung out at night in the woods or
Yep.
whatever. Pure blackness, right? That we consider right when there's no daylight and all that. And even in night, it's not
Wait,
pure. It's not pure day.
the black ones are the aggressive ones, right?
What's that?
I've heard that the black ones are very aggressive ones. They're the ones that are more here in like
Well, the second encounter that I had, this dude was like, dark brown, like cross between rust color and
And like the one
like
where
tan, and it
was
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 more aggressive. It was more aggressive than this one, which was black. So I don't know how did
I
I,
believe it has to do with all the creatures. Like everything can have their choice of being good or evil. I think actually, because I've seen the brown ones, and I had I believe it was a good experience, right? So it's like it all depends on the being, I think maybe. But sorry, continue your story.
Yeah, so we're in the car, we're getting out of the cemetery, and I'm taken to where he said he allegedly lived, right? I'm telling you allegedly because I never actually got to his house, but on the way there, we're talking, and this is a time when I was, kind of really heavy into Christianity and all that kind of stuff. So, and while that thing was crawling up the hill. By the way, I'm like looking at him and said, "Do you think we ought to pray to Jesus?" And he looks at me, he goes, "Oh no, oh no, no." Okay, so anyways, as we're driving back to his place, we start talking, and he starts talking about how he was involved with the. First of all, he tells me that he's a shaman, and he told me that he goes by the nickname Crow because he's a Crow Indian, right? Which I didn't think was very original. But but the thing with it is, is we're driving to this alleged place. I'm asking him, because he told me he was a shaman. I go, well, what do you mean? What does that mean? You're a medicine man. What does that mean to be a Crow medicine man? And he says he practiced like the dark arts and the death, right? That side of things, right? And I should stay that no more so you don't get banned. But that's what he said. And I asked him to explain it to me, and then he goes into this rant of this story where him and like a group of 15 people went down to a place called Mansfield, Ohio, and that was not 15 people. They just a group of people went down to Mansfield, Ohio, and they took a 15-year-old girl, which they end up doing this sacrifice to, and I'm not going to go into detail about that. But anyways, when he said that, he said it was the most amazing thing that happened because these are his words. He said Lucifer showed up, and it was the most brilliant being and thing he'd ever seen in his life. Just the most beautiful thing they'd ever seen, right? Now, you might say he just might be doing that just to jerk my chain because he obviously figured out that I believed in Jesus, or he must be a terrible Christian, this kind of crap, you know what I mean? You know how people work. We play games with each other, and we judge each other based on, assumptions and how we understand the world and all that kind of. But this is not what it was, because, we never, gave each other's numbers and all that kind of stuff. And on his way to dropping them off, we stopped in this because he wanted me to stop over at where this Italian restaurant is close to the neighborhood that he said that he lived, right? And he says, I go, what's going on? He said, oh, you just dropped me off here. And I said, okay, that's cool. I was like, after hanging out with him, having this weird experience, and listening to this guy, he's saying he's practicing dark arts and had this because one of the things he did when he told me that, he's going through the story of their ritual sacrifice they did with this 15-year-old girl. And he's talking about, Lucifer and all this stuff. I'm not fazed about the Lucifer stuff and all that. I turned around to him and I go, you did what? And he goes, oh yeah, Lucifer was the most beautiful thing I ever seen. No, I'm not talking about that, dude. I'm talking about the 15-year-old girl. I said, man, if that was me, I would feel like the biggest pile of crap there ever was, and I wouldn't know even how to live with myself if I was ever involved in such a thing. And you're telling me this, a complete stranger, the most screwed up story just after what we experienced, you know what I mean? And I'm like, this guy didn't want him. We just had one of like the most intense experiences of my life. And anybody else that shared that same experience would definitely exchange numbers and all that. Not tell a story that they told me, right? They would be like, man, listen, this is amazing, man. We share numbers and, keep in contact, right? You know what I mean? This is like a bonding moment of bonding moments. When anybody ever, but the bizarre thing about these experiences, they're not the most bonding of experiences, especially when people aren't prepared, and even if they are prepared. It's something happens to a lot of people where they'll have the exact same experience, and one person will block it out and say, I don't want to talk about it. It will just disappear and never be a part of your life. And the other person is like obsessed like we are about it, right? It's like possessed by the whole thing, right? In a way, And this dude didn't want anything. So anyway, so as I let him out of the car and he starts walking away, I'm watching him. And I'm still kind of in a daze and shocked and all that. I'm not in fear. I'm just like, what the hell just happened in the past, hour of my life? I mean, what the hell happened? You know what I mean? This is the most bizarre experience I had in my life. And he just walks away and he just kind of just fades away. I never even see him go into the neighborhood, right? He just kind of just disappears. And that was just one of my many experiences. So, but listen, I'm dead serious about what I'm saying about everything. I'll take a million lie detector tests, and I'm more than happy to. And also what I discovered in my journey is, you don't have to go deep in no woods to have this happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
I believe it.
And I have literally 350 yards due east to where I'm sitting right now. There's a 9-foot tall teepee structure, literally, with multiple stripped down trees, right? And other what I would call pseudo teepee structures, where they make ones. There's ones that are really complicated that look just like a teepee, and there's other ones you can tell they're like teepee structures, but they're a little more looser type of thing, right? But you can tell that because the size of the branch or the trees. I'm talking about trees, not branches. Trees.
Yeah.
It's not going to be. Maybe there's a group of teenagers that didn't have anything else better to do, and that's what they did, and that's a possibility. Except when you end up filming something right next to it, so. And you sense it, and you know what's going on, and you have the experiences. You realize there's something more going on than just kids or people practicing witchcraft. I mean, because there's one thing I noticed. These and you brought it up before I even got on here. Many times these tree structures, they have ones that are more complicated, but then they have tree leaves and X's and all this stuff leading to it, and to like almost a very complicated. Well, you might want to call them structures or whatever. I mean, whatever its meaning is. I mean, I think that there's something, but we can talk about some if you want. But my opinion.
That stuff really makes me like it totally. It's intriguing to me, man. Like the way the X, and then it will go to a tree break, and then that will go to another thing, and it's totally designed, man. Like it's
100% designed.
It can't be naturally done, man. It's so weird, right? Like,
and the sizes of them are, and because they're all, yeah. I mean, these trucks they're big. I'm not saying that someone couldn't do it, and human beings couldn't do it, but when you
it'd be hard to do, man, when they're the big ones.
Oh, absolutely. But here's
I don't think a couple teenagers could do it.
Oh no, man, and when you see all these guys, and it's all over the country. There's a guy in Minnesota, and he shows these amazing, complicated structures in the middle of his forest, 2 miles into it. Another guy in Rhode Island, just like me, is just like within a mile or two from his place. There's stuff going on. Somebody in, what I'm saying is that from California to New York, from the northern part of Canada to the southern part of the Americas, there are things going on all over the place, in every state, in every county, and pretty much everywhere.
For sure. 100%, man.
And so there would have to be some... Go ahead.
I have a theory that they travel through, like, the planet's nervous system, if that makes sense. Like, they can literally go into a tree, go into the ground, and pop out somewhere else.
Well, I've seen them. I've seen them come out of trees, and I've seen them go through trees. And we've talked a little bit on comments. And I told you, I mentioned that the trees are the neurons of this creation, right? So this trees, they have the branches reaching out into the ether, into the sky. And then the trunk, and then they have the root systems are spreading throughout the earth, right? I do believe that these things, and I have seen these things pop out of trees, peep out of trees, come out of trees, go through trees. Okay, and I mentioned in the comment that every time I've ever seen one come out of a tree or go through a tree, that tree dies.
That's a trip, man.
And so, so I have my theory. My theory is that somehow, and they're connected with the elemental spirits and the forest spirits and this interdimensional thing, and we're trying to put labels to something that we don't understand, and because of our pride and our indoctrination and our pride, we can't accept that it's beyond our understanding at this point, right? It has to fit this mold or that mold.
Some people that can, like us, why can't other people just get it? You know what I mean?
I think it's because, when you talk the way I'm talking right now, like I have nothing to lose. I've already lost it. And the Bigfoot community has treated me like the biggest pile of crap that there ever was. And I've gone through 5 years to it, so...
I'm all about it, brother. I'm all about it, man.
Okay, so
I'm down to hear any experience anybody's got.
Yeah, I mean, it's the attitudes of some is changing because when people have more and more experience, they start hearing a guy like me, and they go, yeah, I'm having the same experiences as you or something similar, you're right? I see these things that look like they're in the flesh. I haven't actually touched them with my hand. I haven't gone up and shake their hand, so how do I know exactly, fully, that what seems like the flesh is fully the flesh? We don't know that, right? I mean, there's so many questions. Yeah. Like, let's put, but anyways, back to the trees. They have a correlation, and here's, with the underworld, as we like to call it, or the grave. I'm not talking about death. There's something that you got to think different. Most people think that it's about dead bodies and all that kind of stuff. There's an underworld. There's something that's different that's in our realm. There's something that's more in tune with the elements in the earth and the root system and the waterways and all that and the rocks and all that kind of stuff. And somehow these things use the life force in these trees and it is to not only to help themselves trying to manifest, but they also then, when they go through these trees then die, because they don't make structures out of living things. I've seen a couple things that, tunnels that could be, but for the most, but most of this stuff is dead stuff. So I think there's like, and if we think about energy beings and electricity and water and how, trees are a great conductor of electricity, They are. That's why they always get struck by lightning and shatter in a million pieces and all that kind of stuff. Just like we're great conductors of electricity. And we're made up of water, and then trees are made up about the same amount percent of water as we are. And I'm pretty much convinced at this point that these trees that they go through that then die, then they make these structures with, and I think the structures they do have a connection with, because I saw, honestly with you, in June, I remember it was a Tuesday, and on June, a portal opened up in my neighbor's yard, in which 3 beings, and by the way, this is the middle of the day. I mean, when you start talking this way, everyone's going to think you're crazy. So all I can say is, if you're going to go down this road, either you go all the way. If you're going to do this, man, you go all the way or don't, and you better be ready to. You're going to deal with crazy stuff, and you're going to learn about things about spiritual warfare, and you're going to have, I've been dealing with that my whole life, man. I was an addict for 12 years, and I've had a lot of spiritual attack on me many times, through my entire life. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it's like we were talking about before, like how we I think you just said to me, like, about like there's many different things that we're all calling Bigfoot,
yes,
or Sasquatch or whatever, right?
Yes.
So who's to say what?
Oh, can anybody hear me? Yeah. Jared, I can't hear you. Can anybody hear me?
So it's
oh, there
really
you go.
weird,
You're back.
Right? Like, so
you drop.
Am I having an experience with a different species or a different, totally different thing?
Well, you know, species, entity, beings. You know, it's. I mean, from what I can tell, what you guys are experiencing over in the West is not the same thing we're experiencing in Ohio and Michigan, in the Great Lakes region. Although some things look the same, I mean, you guys, the things that are over there, maybe it's because there's larger trees, more virgin forests. There's more terrain. There could be, and why not? If we look at the creation itself around us, the millions of different species and animals, right? From crustaceans, single-cell amoebas to crustaceans to fish to mammals, amphibians, reptiles, blah, 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 birds, you know what I mean? To think there's only one thing is really... that's one of the part of the problem, I think, that the quote-unquote Bigfoot community needs to address. Everyone's kind of focusing on one thing. I just watched this video. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Elusive, the one in Britain, and
I've seen that in the UK one.
Yeah, and they're dealing with the same thing, right? And they're all coming to the same conclusions too. That we keep looking for this solely flesh and blood entity, right? We find signs and symbols, but let's be honest. How many times has anybody found? I know there's been stories of it, but it was just like in the past 5 years of all the people that are doing some kind of research and having encountered, piles of bones where these things are eating. I mean, when's the last time anybody saw them? I know we assume that they're eating these deer and these elk and all that, but no one's really seen it that I know of, except for a few accounts. And worse than that is that we don't know physical signs. That we don't know physical.
I don't know if we've seen them getting eaten.
Yeah, and it's like here, even with the spiritual warfare that I went through, and maybe next time I'll share about the real bad one, the encounter where it was for 3 days. And, because there's a dark side to this, too. But even through that, and I did have some health effects from it, but for the most part, I haven't heard too many people that have died from Dogman, Bigfoot, whatever, you know what I mean? Sasquatch, I'm not saying things don't happen, but I'm saying that it's... the way it's playing out, that this thing is much more. But here's one thing, though. We do have certain advantages now today. In the past decade, the improvements of night vision cameras and just cameras in general. Like I use a P900 to film stuff, and I changed my approach from making videos to taking stills. When I started taking stills, I started getting amazing images, and they're not pareidolia. And I spent too much time studying pareidolia, studying pictures. I know the difference between a pareidolia and an entity just standing there blatantly there. And I'm telling you, these things come in different shapes and sizes. My experiences, and I've heard from many other people, is that when you experience Sabe or Bigfoot or Sasquatch, they're never alone. I'm not talking about other Bigfoot. I'm talking there's other entities with them, right? Always. And I think that's part of how they're able to sense or know when you're there. They talk about familiar spirits.
They know you're coming miles in advance, man. That's what I believe. they can tell you're fucking coming fucking miles away.
Well, they know our thoughts too. And so how does this happen? So is it just one entity that we're dealing with, or are we dealing with like maybe they have like spiritual fleas? Just think of it this way, right? And they interact with our spiritual fleas. And when our spiritual fleas are hearing about what we're up to, they talk to each other, right? And they say, hey, Mike's going to be going out. And we got a very good idea that he wants to go this way. Because I'm telling you, that, like, for instance.
They know I'm going out to stay today. They literally know I'm going out there today to go squatching around.
Absolutely. And they present a present like a footprint or a tree lean or an X structure. But here's the thing, though. What I notice is they kind of guide us to these spots. You know what I mean? Yes. Like here I had an experience when I found this teepee structure that turned out to be 350 yards from where I'm sitting right now in a ravine out next to a cemetery. Anyways, I was going to a place called Maumee Bay State Park that is about 15 miles away, because I found some really cool tree structures in there and filmed a lot of really cool things, what I call tree spirits, forest spirits, entities, that kind of stuff, along with something, like a few things that could arguably be called Bigfoot or Sasquatch. But anyways, I got all the way there. I got right to the edge of that forest, this swamp area that's right it's right on the banks of the Maumee River, right? Lake Erie,
okay.
the western side of it. And something just kept on telling me, go back home, go back home, go back home. So, and I, you kind of, I don't feel like this. I'm going to go back home. I don't want to be here all by myself. And then I go to another spot on the way, and it's still telling me, go back home, go back home. So I go back home, and then I'm in my house, and take a little break, and something says, oh, that's time to go out. And so I go to this spot in my town that I've been looking at to see if there might be something going on there next to the creek, the main creek that runs through it, that eventually ends up into Lake Erie. And I take a few images, and you say, no, you haven't been to this spot in a long time. Let's go over there, that ravine next to that cemetery. Not the same one I'm talking about where I had the first experience, but a different cemetery, this larger one, that's closer to my place. And lo and behold, right there, it leads me right to this big old tree structure, and this, you know what I mean? And this teepee and all this other structures, and I'm like, and that's the reason why I tried, and it's very difficult to do this, and anybody that's sucked into this knows this. Once you start going down this road, just like Steve says, once you're part of the club of no return, it's very difficult to fight the urges to go out there in the woods, to go out there and do research, to go out there and watch every video that there ever is, right? And part of it is, you and I are recovering addicts. I was Mr. AA. I was an AA guru. Started meetings that still exist today. I did the steps all the way through 6 times. I'd sponsored tons of guys, etc., etc. So, you know what I mean? There are certain personalities like us. Then you add on top of the spiritual influence on us. And we're hooked, and it's hard to fight this. So I tried. My inner man, the soul wants to keep going out there and reach it. Every day I want to go out there, but I fight it, and I've learned that I can. I don't do that anymore. I might go out once a month now. You know what I mean? Because I know it's going to happen regardless. I already know what's going. You know what I mean? I know that they'll suck me into this. They'll control my freaking life, and I don't want it. Now, I can't tell everybody else in their path and where they're going, but I know for me personally, it is not good for me to focus on this 24/7. You know what I mean? It really isn't.
I mean, it's not good to be like that with anything. You know what I mean? Become too obsessed with anything, you're gonna just get too involved, and it can take over your life, right?
Oh yeah, man! I'm telling you, when you have these experiences, I mean, dude, when you have these experiences, you'll be afraid. I mean, I do. I have moments when I'm afraid to go out my freaking front porch to have a cigarette. I still do it, but I'm like, kind of just sticking my head out the door at times. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Why can't I have? I'm afraid, but I can sense these things now. You know what I mean? I know that when these spirits are present, right? I can feel the hair on my back. You know what I mean? And they're not in my yard. I mean, I've done the spiritual work. But I mean, I filmed this stuff. I got some most amazing images in my neighbors' yards. You know what I'm saying? Because once you're open to it, and you
around me right now, okay, they could be right in this house with me right now, and I wouldn't even be able to tell. I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, people have talked about it, right? I mean, people have talked about it, right? They've talked about these big, hairy ape, giant beings in their houses, right? Somehow they magically just went through a wall that they should have been destroyed, right? And they went through the wall and they came back out. You know what I mean? Or they just magically opened the door and then, and there will be footprints or there won't be footprints. It's kind of like, you ever heard about these church people that they'll say that they see the footprints on the carpet and all that after they have their craziness and all that. It's the same thing. It's very similar. I mean, to that when we see in the snow and in the footprints and when we find them, right? How many times you hear about it? Everybody knows this, right? It's no secret that these footprints disappear. They stop.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, okay, guys, what do you think is going on here? Like, and for people to throw away this interdimensional or whatever is going on, like that kind of theory, it's like, how do you explain this stuff? These footprints that just lead off somewhere and literally just stop. In the snow or wherever, right?
And the vast majority of people that have dedicated, decades of their life study, they all come to the same conclusion, right, as us, that there's something more going on than just a flesh and blood entity. There's something more going on here. And our ancestors have been talking about this forever and a day, too, whether it's the indigenous tribes throughout the North America. It doesn't matter where it is, to be honest with you. Every single culture in this world has talked about these entities in one form or another.
Yep.
So either everyone's full of crap and you're smarter than them, or it's time to be honest about the fact that actually just because of our public fool system and our higher education doesn't mean that we know everything. In fact, most people, I'm not saying you're one of them, Jared, but there's a lot of us that if the electricity was shut off, we wouldn't know what to do.
Oh, fuck, man. No, I get that for sure.
We're so disconnected.
I'm good enough to go catch fucking 100 pounds of fish, and I can take care of myself,
Right.
I can do things like that and take care of shit, right? But
so
I wouldn't be lost without it. I get what you're saying, though. A lot of people would literally be lost. They wouldn't know what to do.
When we say lot, we're talking like 90-something% of all people in Western civilization, because of how they've captured our minds, our lives, and our essence through all the different institutions that they have, and whether it's the internet and the World Wide Web, it's TikTok and all these other platforms, if it's the public fool system, the television. We are so disconnected to reality for the most part. And the funny thing is, we are not smarter than 3 generations ago. 3 generations. I mean, if you all
They're trying to drain our spiritual fucking side with all this stuff, man.
I think so. I think they're captivating our souls for one reason or another. And there's an interesting guy out there, and I think he's not around anymore, but his. Bob Monroe, do you know about him? And the Monroe Institute, and he talks about near-death experiences, and he talks about this thing called the loosh. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I know about the loosh.
And I'm wondering if these things, these entities... Yeah, they feed off our emotions, right?
The negative ones. Yeah.
They feed off our fears and they feed off all of our emotions and all that. And I just wonder if there is some truth to this. There's people who are coming out now and talking about this reincarnation, soul trap matrix that we're living in, right? And
I know about that. I believe that.
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
a possibility for sure.
I don't know if it's true or not, but they have some pretty. Well, they got some things to think that make you think. You know what I'm saying? And it's worth looking into because I think there's a connection as well to when because we're talking about because I remember that summer as well when I saw that. It wasn't just Bigfoot that I saw that. I mean, I saw something that people would identify as a UFO. And I watched that thing for minutes traverse across the sky. I saw, so I seen UFOs. I mean, and the damnedest thing is, I had a crap cell phone at the time and I couldn't film it. It was, you try to take a picture of the moon with your cell phone.
I had the same situation when I seen mine, man. The crappiest cell phone, and I tried filming this stuff and it literally looked like a little dot.
Yeah, you couldn't, and you could, if you try to magnify it, it's too pixelated, so it doesn't look like anything, and you're like, damn, and but with your own eyes, like for me, I saw it moving, and I saw that go bad. I'm sorry about that. I get excited when I get a chance to share my story. I'm sorry. Because you know what?
Share away, man. Share away.
It's not about it all becoming. This has nothing about making a following or people believing in me. It's a way of decompressing all the stuff that's been hidden inside you for years. You know what I mean? And so when you get a chance to talk about this stuff, it's like a giant release, and it's one of those things that you can honestly say in your life, you experienced it.
You just made a lot of sense to me, man, because I experience that every time I tell my stories, right? It's just like I can't help but be like, I get so almost like an adrenaline rush when I start telling my story, man. Like about my UFO encounter or my interdimensional craft, right?
Right.
Like, it's like an urge of like adrenaline, and I'm like so passionate about it. And people think you're just like, it's such a wild feeling, man.
Yeah, and we're not talking like the kind of creative release they say like good storyteller or a musician or does. You know what I mean?
No, it's a good release. I get what you're saying. It's like it's good for us, man.
It's not. It's you're right. It's a inner man's spiritual soul release. It has nothing to do with the ego at all. Yeah. Because
exactly.
When you find another individual that's willing to actually listen to your story, is not going to censor your story, is not going to judge your story, it's a huge freaking release because it's very rare. It is extremely rare.
Yeah,
man. And I've been on other shows and had wanted to know my story, and then what did they do? They edit 50% of it.
I'm gonna shake this Bigfoot world up. I think I'm gonna fucking come out there and with a podcast, and I'm just gonna do what I do, man. Like, I'm gonna speak my truth, and I'm gonna let everybody speak their truth, and let all this. I'm not gonna hold back nothing from nobody, man. Like,
you get the point.
Why would you do that? What's the point of that? And the whole Bigfoot community needs to freaking wake up, man.
Well, I'm
people to tell their truth to them, and then they just they won't even tell people the story. They'll just throw it away, pretty much.
We'll just have to start our own community. We'll just have to start our own community. This is what we're going to have to do. At the end of the day, that's what we're going to have to do. Right? You know what I mean?
Shake it up, man. We're going to shake it up.
Instead of being worried about the community and worrying about what people think about you, because this is what's going to happen until they have the experience. They're going to think we're idiots, or think we're stupid. They're going to think we're on drugs. We're going to think blah 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 blah. They're going to say all this stuff. You know what? I don't care if anybody else believes me except for you, Jared, because you had an experience and I had an experience. We know what's going on. That person I care about. You have not had this experience. I'm not trying to judge you or not, But I can't expect you to even see and believe what I've gone through if you haven't gone through it. Hell, if I didn't go through it, I wouldn't believe me. That's the
It's like,
truth.
I do believe you, man. 100%, man.
You know, and
Like 100%. Legit.
it's,
You know?
I got no, it's a life changer, man. And it's like, it kind of, it ruins some things and it redirects you in other things. I mean, you're still living life. You just realize that, man,
I totally get what you're saying, man, because some people will think like, oh, you feel the energy from like your friends and family almost in some ways. Like they think, oh, this guy's just obsessed with this thing or whatever, right? And yeah, it's nice to talk to freaking like-minded people, man. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, it's therapeutic,
You know?
right? You know what I mean? It's not a religion. It's not a cult. I don't want to be part of any cottage industry. I don't want to exploit anybody in this. I'm just sharing my experience, and my experience I've discovered has been shared by millions of
We
people.
want to learn from each other.
Right. And millions of people experienced this over the years. I think one of the things they did to us as well with like pushing all this stuff like hey, you got to take ayahuasca and have take all these drugs in order to have this experience. I think that was part of a psyop in its own right. I'm not saying not to take it and you do what you want to do with it, but I'm telling you, you don't need to have you don't need to have any of these experiences and even touch anything. I'm telling you, all you have to do is just
Open your mind.
that's it. But, focus on it. Manifest it through focusing on it. Just like you would do if you focused on starting a new business or going to school or studying, a textbook for an exam. It's the same idea. You focus on this stuff will manifest in your life, and then you're gonna have to deal with it because once they know, the party's on, and it's gonna be with you.
You're tagged, man. Once you're in this game, from like once they know about you, yeah, I believe you're tagged, and like I believe there's the goods and like the bads, right? And like if you're tagged by the goods, the bad, the bad know you too, right? And if you're in an area, they'll come to you. They might just come and do something to you, or try to mess with you, right? Like they can tell that where I am. If there's a bad one in that area, they can sense me.
Yeah.
They know.
I think of it like this, it's maybe a real bad analogy, but think about what it was like in high school. You had friends that were happy to see you. You had a lot of people in high school that they just walked on by and sat in that classroom and indifferent that you even existed. And there was always going to be that one person that was going to try to push your buttons and want to get in a fight with you or bully you. It's how it is. You're in a new school now. You're in a new flow. You're in a new, school of entities, and there's going to be a bunch of them that are all around you. They're indifferent with you. There's going to be some that are gravitate to you and find interest in you, and there's going to be other ones that, given the opportunity, they're going to drive fear and dread in your life and make your life a misery, right? And then on top of that, then you have to deal with human beings, and if these human beings, our fellow human beings, are too trapped in the matrix, this is what I call it. I think it's probably what you call it as well, the matrix. A matrix is designed to capture your mind so you can't see clearly what's around you. If you're trapped in the matrix, you're not going to be able to accept what we're talking about. There's no way you could. Until you're willing to break free. In fact, I think these kind of experiences are necessary to help you break away from the matrix.
Exactly. I say it all the time, man. Soul activation, I call it sometimes. Like seeing the interdimensional stuff and anything like that. Having these experiences that they really open your mind, right? So your soul, your mind, you're being like activated or opened. Your mind, right? So you're not like everybody else out there. So you're different now, right?
Well, we're definitely different, aren't we? For better or worse, we're different. So you know what I mean. Well, Jared, man, I had a heck of a good time. I got more stories to share with you, but it's been.
Dude, I'm definitely I definitely like chatting with you. I think we could just chat and talk and have a good time, man. So
Yeah.
definitely want to do it again for sure, man. And
anytime you want to, man.
when I start my broadcast in the future, I'd love to have you as a guest on there or whatever, or come on and talk with me. Be one of the guys, right? Because I'd like to have, maybe when I do start it, I'm thinking of having ideas like where, I've met a lot of good people on TikTok here, where we could just like maybe have a thing where we talk once in a while, or every other week we have a chat, right?
Right.
Do something like that.
Hey, is it okay? Hey, Jared, is it okay for me to like record this and then put it on my small YouTube channel so I can send the people who are following me to you?
Yes, 100%, bro.
They already know my story. And by the way, because I'm so heavily, I used to have a channel that had thousands of subs, and then it was taken down on the 6th of January last year, along with thousands of other channels too, for speaking too honestly about things. Right? We don't have to talk about any of that stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
But and so I'm heavily censored now, but the small little group of people that follow me, let's send them your way. That's the best way for me to do it. You know what I mean? They all know my story, and I can tell you this much: the way I'm censored is, I'll be lucky to have 200 people even let's see my stuff. So,
my YouTube channel is so small because I had one and it got taken down, and I haven't been focusing on it much, but. Send them there. Send them to the TikTok. Do whatever you want, man.
I mean, you're an ally. You're an ally. I've talked to a couple of guys like this, and I'm like, and they have issues with it. And I'm like, listen, I get nothing out of this. I get no money out of this. I get a lot of grief out of this. And the reason why I would like to put these things on my YouTube channel is not for me to. It's for us. If we're going to start, like I told you, we're going to have to start a new group. We have to come out of what is today we call the Bigfoot community and have a new community that's willing to go bigger and deeper than Sasquatch. As much as we love Sasquatch, like we talked about, there's multiple things going on, and there's a lot of things that we're calling Bigfoot that I don't believe are Bigfoot. And how are we going to break through? We got to break through that paradigm of thinking, and that's by talking together, sharing our experiences, sharing what we're finding out, and go to the next level. Because some people are talking, and you talked about as well, forest people. Okay, let's do it that way. Let's go in that direction, a different direction. You know what I mean?
I'm down with that. That's a good one. I like the forest people idea too. That's a good term to use, I think.
Well, I can live with that because I know there's more than one thing going on here. So you know what I mean, and I can't tell you fully what's going on here. But we have to be able to have a group of people where we can say that this is what I really experienced. I know it sounds crazy. I know.
Do it. You don't have to be freaking judged by these people that are just ridiculous way of thinking. I think.
Well, here's the thing too, and they value so much science, right? And the scientific method, and then when you talk to him, you go, so tell me about your application scientific method. We'll see the documentation, we'll see how you're applying it in your research and all that and whatever you're doing. And you find out not a single one of them's doing it. They go out once a month, maybe at best, and tromp around the woods with their buddies. Like, that's not scientific method. There's a lot to it. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that I can do that anymore, too, because of my health issues, so I can't do what I used to do, right? I mean, but I still having these experiences, and I'm being led to these certain spots. You know what I mean? Where these things are happening, and I mean that's so. But if I,
there for sure, 100%. Like just like this, how this rock was found and it made its way home with me. Like it's not a coincidence, man. This stuff is just. 1 week later we see the Sasquatch in the same area. It comes walking out from the direction where the rock was found.
Yeah.
It can't be coincidence, right?
Many times they want us to see them when we have these moments. You know what I mean? Like I had a sighting. It was a Sunday after I found the teepee structure in my same town, but on the other side of the creek, on the south side of the town, in this path where hardly no one ever goes to, and you do have some of these brief sightings. A lot of time you wrestle with it. You're like, Was that a deer? We don't have any bear here. There's no coyotes that get even close to being big as, pit bulls are bigger than twice the size of coyotes around here. What is going on here? What was that big brown thing that just went from there to there? You come to terms and say, damn, I saw it again. I can't believe I saw it again. And I honestly believe that
I can't hear anybody.
You can't hear anybody? I can hear you.
It's gone.
Are you back, man? All right. You there, man? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, we'll close shop. But I think
that was my internet connection dropped there.
Yeah, it was. Hey, and thanks, Jared, for spending an hour with me and having I knew you were my brother. When it came time, when the time was right, we'd talk, and we are brothers. We are brothers in the tribe of no return, and so might as well support each other and not judge each other, and just, you have your experience, I have my experience, was learn from it, right? And grow from it and figure out what's going on. So, but it's a crazy ride.
Let's end her. Let's end her, but I just wanted to come on because I didn't want to just end you there, right? And just drop. I wanted to come on and make sure,
I totally agree with you, man.
Or goodbye.
I totally agree with you, man.
But we definitely are going to do this again, man. I'm going to be in contact with you. Share that live on, if you have to, download both of them and mix it together, share this stuff wherever you want, man.
It would lead to you, and then it would lead to others, so. Yeah, there's.
Definitely had a good time.
Cool, man. I'm going to let you go, man. Mother Nature's calling, so I got to let go. All right, see you later.
All right, later. Bye. Here we go. Oh, that was cool. That was fun, eh? That was cool, man. I had a blast there chatting. What time is it? It's 10:30. I have to get off, guys. I'm about to go get ready and go squatching myself. Gonna go walk around and see what we can find out there. I love doing that, man. I really love talking to people like that. So, yeah. If anybody out there, I gotta make a video. I always forget, man. I gotta make a video of to tell people, to come and share your stories, right? I love chatting with people like that. It's great. All right, guys, I'm going to end her. Veronica, love ya. Cecilia and Jen, love ya. MC, love ya. You're my new subscriber. Jimmy J, everybody in here, man, thank you for being here. And make sure you guys come back when I join, man. When I'm online, give me a follow. You'll get the notification. I love having every one of you guys in here. You guys are amazing, man. I had a great time this morning. That was awesome conversation, man, with a bunch of people. Loved it. All right, guys, I'm off. I will be safe. Adios, amigos.
You're going to try. Go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you are going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind. Running
if I can.